You are floating in the cold blue water off the coast of South Africa. The sun cuts down through the surface in long shafts. Below you, a great white shark glides past. 3 meters of muscle, teeth, and instinct. The most feared predator in human imagination. Then something changes. The shark stops. It turns. It moves in a way no great white is supposed to move. It flees. Above you, a black dorsal fin rises through the swell. Taller than a man, the shark is running from something, and in the entire ocean, there is only one thing it runs from. Most people assume the great white shark sits at the top of the food chain. It does not. There is one animal that hunts the hunters, one animal that other apex predators see and immediately try to disappear, not out of confusion, out of recognition, out of fear that has been written into their nervous systems across generations, the orca. And the strangest part is not that orcas are dangerous. The strangest part is that almost nothing in the ocean is willing to fight back. Here is where it gets interesting. In nature, when a predator attacks, prey usually has options: run, hide, school together, fight back, or play dead. Sharks bite, whales ram, squid release ink, octopuses change color. Every species has a strategy, but when an orca arrives, those strategies tend to collapse. Animals that normally fight do not fight. Animals that normally flee in clever zigzags swim in straight, exhausted lines. Animals that normally school together break apart. It is almost as if the ocean recognizes a specific kind of threat and submits. In 1997, off the Farallon Islands near San Francisco, 2 whale watchers witnessed something that changed marine biology. A female orca, later cataloged as CA2, approached a great white shark near the surface. Researchers Peter Pyle and Scot recorded what happened next. The orca rammed the shark, flipped it upside down, and held it still. The shark stopped moving. Within about 15 minutes, the orca had eaten the shark's liver. Nothing else, just the liver. The remaining great whites in the area, animals that had been feeding on seals in those waters for years, vanished. Not for a day, not for a week. The tagging data from researcher Salvador Jorgensen at the Monterey Bay Aquarium showed that the surviving sharks left the entire region. Some did not return for an entire year. 1 orca, 1 kill. An entire population of apex predators displaced. Most people assume sharks are too dangerous, too sharp, too aggressive to be hunted. What researchers found was the opposite. When a shark is flipped upside down, it enters a state called tonic immobility. The body goes limp, the breathing slows, the animal becomes completely defenseless. Orcas seem to have figured this out. Off the coast of South Africa, 2 specific male orcas named Port and Starboard have been hunting 7-gill sharks and great whites since around 2015. Marine biologist Alison Towner has documented their work carefully. They flip the sharks. They open the body cavity with surgical precision. They remove the liver, which is rich in oils called squalene. They leave the rest. The sharks know. Tagged great whites have been recorded fleeing entire stretches of coastline the moment Port and Starboard appear on acoustic monitors. But that is not the strange part. The strange part is that orcas around the world are doing different things. Completely different things. In Norway, orcas have learned to herd herring into tight balls using their tails. In Patagonia, they intentionally beach themselves on the sand to grab sea lion pups, then wriggle back into the water. In the Antarctic, a pod of orcas will swim together in a line, create a wave with their bodies, and wash a seal off an ice floe. In New Zealand, they hunt stingrays in shallow water, pinning them down with their fins. These are not instincts. These are techniques, taught, passed down, inherited. Researcher Lance Barrett-Leonard at the Coastal Ocean Research Institute has spent decades studying orca populations in the Pacific Northwest. What he and his colleagues found is that orcas live in distinct cultural groups, not just different pods, different cultures, different diets, different dialects of vocalization, different hunting traditions. The resident orcas eat almost exclusively salmon. The transient orcas eat marine mammals. The offshore orcas specialize in sharks. They live in the same ocean. They will not interbreed. They do not even speak the same language. This is something we usually reserve for describing humans. Here is where the science becomes harder to explain. Why would so much of the ocean be afraid of an animal that is not even the biggest predator down there? A sperm whale is larger. A blue whale is enormous. Yet sperm whales, when orcas appear, form a defensive formation called a marguerite. The adults face outward in a circle. The calves are placed in the center. They wait. They do not attack. They wait for the orcas to leave. Blue whales, the largest animals that have ever existed on this planet, larger than any dinosaur, will be hunted by coordinated pods of orcas. In 2019, off the coast of Western Australia, researcher Robert Pittman documented the first confirmed orca kill of an adult blue whale. The pod worked in shifts. Some bit at the tongue. Others held the whale from below. The hunt lasted hours. Think about that. The largest animal in the history of the planet, killed by a coordinated team of much smaller predators. What gives orcas this power is not their size. It is their brain. The orca brain is the second largest of any animal on Earth. It weighs around 6.5 kilograms. The human brain weighs about 1.5. But weight is not the most interesting part. The structure is. Orcas have an enlarged paralimbic system. This is the part of the brain associated in humans with deep emotional processing, social bonding, and self-awareness. Neuroscientist Lori Marino, who has studied cetacean brains for decades, has argued that orcas may experience emotions in ways more complex than we do. They mourn their dead. In 2018, an orca named Tali Kwa carried her dead calf on her back for 17 days through the waters off the Pacific Northwest. She would not let the body sink. The pods stayed with her. They slowed their travel. They waited. Orcas have never been recorded killing a human in the wild. Not once. Not a single confirmed case in all of recorded history. In captivity, yes. In the open ocean, never. Researchers believe this is not coincidence. They believe orcas know what we are. They recognize us, they make a choice, and here is where it gets stranger. Some orcas appear to help humans. Off the coast of Eden in Australia from the 1840s until 1930, a pod of orcas led by a male called Old Tom worked with human whalers. The orcas would herd baleen whales into the bay, alert the whalers by slapping the water, and in exchange, the whalers would leave the tongue and lips of the kill for the orcas. The cooperation lasted for nearly a century, across generations of both species. When Old Tom died in 1930, his skeleton was preserved. You can still see his teeth, worn down on one side from gripping the ropes of whaling boats to guide them. This is not predator and prey. This is something else. So why does nothing in the ocean want to fight an orca? Because an orca is not just a predator. An orca is a strategist. An orca remembers. An orca teaches. An orca coordinates with others who are also remembering, also teaching, also adapting. When you fight an orca, you are not fighting an animal. You are fighting a culture. Sharks have instincts, orcas have plans. And the deeper question is what this tells us about intelligence itself. For most of human history, we assume that intelligence was a ladder with us at the top. But intelligence does not work that way. It is not a ladder. It is a forest. Different species evolved different kinds of minds for different kinds of problems. The orca mind was shaped by something we do not fully understand. A long-lived social mammal, a vocal learner, a cooperative hunter, a creature that can recognize itself in a mirror, mourn its young, and pass down techniques across generations. In other words, almost everything that we once thought made us uniquely human. And then something unexpected happened. Beginning around 2020, off the coast of Spain and Portugal, a small group of orcas began attacking sailboats. They would target the rudder, they would disable the vessel, then they would leave. Researcher Alfredo Lopez Fernandez, who has been tracking the behavior, identified a female orca the team named White Gladys as the apparent originator. Something seemed to have happened to her. A trauma. An entanglement, a boat strike. No one knows for certain, but the behavior spread. Other orcas in the pod began doing it, then younger orcas. The behavior is being learned. It is being passed down. This is not aggression. This is teaching, and it raises a question that marine biologists are only beginning to ask out loud. If orcas can learn, remember, coordinate, mourn, and teach across generations, then the line we have drawn between human culture and animal behavior was never as clean as we thought. Now think back to that great white shark, fleeing the moment a black dorsal fin appears on the horizon. It is not running because the orca is bigger. It is not running because the orca is faster. It is running because somewhere in its small, ancient brain, there is the memory of an animal that thinks, that coordinates, that waits, that chooses when to strike, an animal that has outthought every other predator in the ocean. The shark does not know what the orca is, but it knows it is being outthought. And in the end, that is the quiet truth of the deep ocean. Strength is not what rules down there. Teeth are not what rule. Size is not what rules. What rules is the mind that can predict the move before the move is made. The mind that can teach its young, remember its dead, and decide who lives and who does not. There is only one mind in the ocean that does all of those things, and almost nothing wants to fight it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, subscribe for more videos like it. See you in the next one.